Hello, and welcome to Week 1, Unit 2 of Application Development for SAP Business by Design. In this unit, we'll be looking at download and installation of the SAP Cloud Application Studio. We'll go ahead and figure out where we need to download it, some of the prerequisites to be able to download, and then we'll have it installed and take a quick look at it. Some things before we actually download the Studio itself. The Studio is version dependent. That means that if I'm running SAP Business by Design release 1502, I should also be using release 1502 of the SAP Cloud Application Studio to do my development. I wouldn't be able to, let's say, use release 1502 of SAP Business by Design in conjunction with release 1411 of the SAP Cloud Application Studio. The Studio itself is not forward or backward compatible. You always have to use the right Studio build for the right release. You can always find the latest Studio build by going to the SAP Service Marketplace, which we'll see in a minute. The content that we build, though, I will say, is forward compatible. So that means that anything that we build in 1411 would automatically be ready for 1502 and so forth. There's a few key pieces against that which we'll talk about later. Some commercial prerequisites. To be able to download from the SAP Service Marketplace, you obviously have to have an S user. But more importantly, you have to have an authorized S user to download the SAP Cloud Application Studio. How do you become authorized? Well, you'll need to sign the correct contract and then pay your associated fees, and then some S user at your company will become authorized. You can manage your authorization as well by going to the SAP Partner Edge portal, so sappartneredge.com, go to Partner Login, My Partnership, and Manage My Partnership application. There you can manage your authorizations, and once you've gone through the correct contract process, you can set up who will be able to download the Studio. Technical prerequisites. You'll need to be running Microsoft Windows, specifically either XP, Vista, or 7 and up. Now with this, we need this because we use Microsoft Visual Studio as our path or way of doing development with the SAP Cloud Application Studio. So that means that it's technically not available on a Macintosh or on Linux or Unix. I specifically run a Mac, but I also have Windows as a VM. So you'll need Microsoft Windows to be able to install the Studio itself. Some other things that you'll need is that you'll need the Microsoft.NET Framework. You'll need, obviously, Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 Isolated Shell. If you already have Microsoft Studio, then you should be okay. And you'll also need Microsoft Silverlight. If you've already been using SAP Business by Design, you'll likely already have Silverlight installed. Now, as you go and install the actual Studio, it's going to do checks to make sure that you have these things in place, and if not, it will help you in installing those different frameworks correctly. One last thing before we go into seeing where to download is updates. So every release in itself will have a new version of the Studio, but even within a release, we have updates that come out. These updates will usually include bug fixes, maybe minor changes, enhancements to documentation, and you can want to make sure that you use the most recent updated version of the Studio so you're getting the full benefit of it. Now you can always go back to the Service Marketplace to download those updates, or you can also within your SDK, the Studio itself, be able to have it automatically check. If you go into the administration menu, options and settings, and updates, there's a place where you can say check for updates and set some timeline when it should be continuously checking. We'll see this later when we get into the Studio itself. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the where to download. I am in the Service Marketplace here. I went to service.sap.com, and let's go to the SAP Support Portal. In here, I'm going to want to look at download software. Let me get logged in here so it doesn't keep asking for certificates. Authenticate me, great. Okay, download software, and then we're going to use the search for software. This is the easiest way to find it. I can go in and be able to search for SAP Cloud Applications Studio. Let's go ahead and click search. And once this comes up, you'll see a list of the Studio builds themselves in different releases. So you can see there's builds back to 1302, 1305, etc., all the way up to 1502 where we are today. For us, we're going to be using 1502 currently. So I'm going to select my first result there and say SAP Cloud App Studio 1502, OS independent, and then I'll add this to my download basket and download it. Now once I go ahead and download this, it's going to give me a file that looks very much like this. You'll see it's a .msi file, and I can run this and it'll go to actually try and install the Studio. And here's where it'll check to make sure you have the proper frameworks in place, etc. And once that's done, you should see a new icon on your desktop as well as in your menu for SAP Cloud Application Studio 1502. I have it pinned down here on my taskbar since I use it quite often. And the first thing you'll see is that you get a login prompt here. I'm going to go ahead, we need to basically be able to connect to a specific tenant to do our development, whether it's a test tenant, a production tenant to upload, whatever it might be. So we'll need to maintain the different tenants that we use, and we can do that through this login just by clicking on this pencil, and it's going to show us this options menu. I can also get this by going to administration and then options from there, and the connectivity tab will open up and I'll see a list of entries. Now you may have a lot of other entries in there, things that don't make sense. You can always go ahead and just delete the ones that are there. I've gone ahead and added my own tenant specifically to here. This is the test tenant that I will be developing on throughout this course. The important thing is that you give it a name. It could be any type of name you want. Keep it descriptive for you, as you may find that you'll have a large list of tenants that you develop on depending on what your scenario is. And then the host name. And the host name is the actual URL of your tenant. Notice to keep out that I don't have http:// I have nothing after the .com. It's just the my3.sapbusinessbydesign.com. After you have that, you may also want to check if you need a proxy. As I'm on our corporate network, I need a proxy as well. But then I'm going to go ahead and hit save after I've made all my changes and say OK. And now I'll actually have the Studio ready and I can start developing. So that completes it for this week, this unit. I'm sorry, not this week. In this unit, we were able to find out where to download, what some of the prerequisites are, and install the Studio itself. In the next unit, we'll actually take a look at the Studio and some of the different key parts of it. Thank you very much.